I mean, we're mystified, really. Why would he call off any sort of revolt at the vote? And why is his first column not about politics?
Well, I suspect that he will be talking about politics a lot in his Daily Mail columns, and he has kind of laid the ground rules, hasn't he, by being the ringmaster of surprise, by coming out with something completely different for his first column, but saying, oh, I'll talk about politics if I absolutely have to. I suspect we'll find he has to talk about politics absolutely quite a lot. The vote. So what he's trying to do is to minimise this, really. If there had been a huge scene in the House of Commons on Monday with, MPs packing the no lobby and MPs packing the yes lobby, there would have been a huge fuss about the whole thing. What he's trying to do is two things. One, he's trying to minimise the whole impact of the report. And secondly, he's not wanting to expose the lack of support he's got among Conservative MPs. Yes. So that's why he's calling his supporters to stand down, really. This report, it's notwithstanding the fact that it's found Boris Johnson guilty of all manner of lies and subterfuge, there's no doubt that the restrictions and the punishments that it's putting forward as a suggestion are vindictive in the extreme.
You think so, do you?
I do.
It divides people as to whether they're
well, a 90 days. Just look at the
not.
history. A 90-day suspension, that is unheard of. I look back at the records since 1949. Nobody's been given anything like that ever before. This idea that they remove his parliamentary pass when he stands down as being an MP, again, pure vindictiveness. People have done far worse things than that and not had that privilege taken away from them. So I think Boris is in a sense, quite rightly saying this is vindictive, this is spiteful, which is what his supporters are saying. I have to agree, which again is why he's trying to just put a lid on the whole thing and damp it down.
You see, what is interesting about all of this, and it's a bit of a weird column, as we've been saying, but in the whole scheme of things, I think the Privileges Committee has come out with a very big question mark over it, even though they may be right in terms of the conclusions they've reached. Whereas Boris Johnson, here he is, a shiny new column in the Mail, little video, us talking about it. He comes out quite well, doesn't he? You know,
I think he survived death, political death, more times than Fidel Castro survived being knocked off, by other foreign states. But he just keeps coming back, this guy. He's like the phoenix from the flames. So many people think he's dead and buried and finished, and up he pops again, larger than life. And, of course, he's now walked into another row about taking the Daily Mail column when the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments has said, well, he didn't ask us first. He's putting two fingers up to the establishment, really.
Yeah, because what can they do?
They can't do anything. They cannot do anything. The ACOBA, the shorthand version of that committee, they've long been accused of being toothless to do anything about the revolving door between Whitehall and Parliament and big business. There's nothing they can do. And what I will say is Boris Johnson's been in this position with ACOBA before. Back in 2018, when he stood down as Foreign Secretary, he took a £275,000 a year job with the Daily Telegraph to write columns.
Of course.
And didn't ask their permission. So he knew what would happen. He just doesn't care.
Yeah. And he's still got such a name. I mean, you look at the front page of the Daily Mail, they only have to use that one word, Boris, and you know where to go and read him. And we're still talking about him again this morning.
And we will be talking about him, I think, for a very long time to come.
Yeah. I think it would be a shame, and I don't know whether it depends on how the vote goes, but if they did take away his parliamentary pass, you've got a former Prime Minister there, somebody who is a very committed politician, whatever you think of his politics, not even allowed to go into the House of Commons and take friends or contacts for lunch there. Yeah. That seems extraordinary.
I can't imagine.
He is a former Prime Minister.
He is. I can't imagine it's going to happen. Ultimately, the motion that's being drawn up on Monday is that the report of the Privilege Committee is noted, not necessarily actioned or anything's done about it. It's just that it's going to be noted. That's the motion that we have on the table.
I was watching a bit of Michelle Dewberry last night, and she raised a very good point, actually, which I'd never thought of. And that is that if all these MPs, 650 MPs, and when they all leave, which they all do at some point, and they all get these former members' passes, so they can all waltz into Westminster, they can all sit and eat and drink and take guests, or they're hugely subsidised by it. Why should they get that? We're paying for that.
Well, I think...
Should anybody get a former member's pass?
Well, I don't see why not. I mean, the fact is,
It costs money.
Well, yes, it doesn't.
You've got to have a
cost that
few
much money, to be
perks if
honest.
you've been an MP, haven't you?
I think that's right, Anne. And I think, you know, you've been at the heart of British democracy for a long time. You've played your role. You've done your public duty. OK, arguably, you've got paid very well for it and probably get a very good pension as well. But I think, again, it would come across as being very vindictive if you tried to strip these people of a privilege they'd had for serving their nation.
I just don't know that...
There's an argument to be had.
You've been for lunch. You've been for lunch in the House.
Yes, I have, but with serving members.
Yes, me too. But
Not with former members. I didn't know there was such a thing as a former member's pass, to be fair. And I mean...
But he was Prime Minister. I mean, you can't get away from that. He was a Prime Minister.
You can still go in.
No, you can't.
No,
Not
you
without
can.
a pass.
You can. Well, you can. You have to be the guest of somebody else.
Yeah, but he was a Prime Minister.
And let's not forget, too, that, you know, once you step down from being an MP, your job, in a sense, doesn't end there. You're still going into Parliament. You're part of committees. You're supporting charities. You're doing all manner of things, you know, taking part in debates because your expertise is called for. And to have that, I suppose, freedom of movement with your parliamentary pass is arguably a good thing.
No, I disagree. I disagree on this one.
Not even for a former Prime Minister?
No, not even for a former Prime Minister. If they want to be invited in to give evidence or, you know, do something, well, they can be invited in. And
the former Prime Minister has to queue at security with everybody else.
Well, no, they could be met at number 1 Parliament Street. They won't have to queue there, will they? Just go straight. They just go straight through. But you have to be a guest of somebody else.
Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, people like that who've served the country as Prime Minister have to wait until somebody invites them in.
Yeah.
I don't think that's right. I think...
Because I
agree with that.
Because I mean, Prime Ministers, yes, you can make an argument, but all the rest of them, they're all going in and getting the cheap. I mean, the food in there is very nice and hugely subsidised.
OK, that's a different argument.
Paying for that.
Whether it should be as cheap.
I would agree with you, Stephen. I don't think there should be those subsidies for alcohol, drink, whatever.
Fair
food
enough,
in the House of Commons, or the House of Lords.
It could be competitively priced.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I wouldn't have an issue with it if they paid the same as the rest of us. There you go. That's just me. Cost of living crisis and all the rest of it. Let us know what you think. GB Views, gbnews.com.